Some machines refuse to retire. Built when your grandparents were young, these diesel giants still thunder down the rails today, hauling coal, grain, and passengers across 5 continents. No museum ropes, no velvet cushions, just steel, sweat, and a paycheck. While flashier locomotives came and went, these veterans kept clocking in, decade after decade, outlasting the companies that built them. From the American plains to the mountains of India, here are 10 vintage diesel locomotives that still earn their keep. Number 10. British Rail Class 47. We start in Britain with a locomotive that simply won't take the hint. Between 1962 and 1968, a total of 512 Class 47s rolled out of Brush Traction's Falcon Works in Loughborough and British Railways Crew Works. That made it the most numerous class of mainline diesel locomotive in British history, the standard big diesel of its era. Under the hood sat a Sulzer 12-cylinder engine, originally rated at 2,750 horsepower. Engineers quickly derated it to 2,580 to improve reliability, and that decision tells you everything about this machine's philosophy. Less drama, more dependability. Riding on a Coco arrangement, 6 powered axles, the Class 47 could do it all. Express passenger runs from Aberdeen to Penzance, overnight sleepers, heavy freight, rescuing failed trains that had died on the main line. For 30 years, it was the backbone of British Rail. Here's the remarkable part. More than 60 years after the first one was delivered, a fleet of around 30 is still certified for the national mainline network, working charter trains, infrastructure duties, and the occasional freight for operators like West Coast Railways. Another 30 or so keep busy on heritage railways. And there's a twist. Between 1998 and 2004, 33 worn-out Class 47s were gutted and rebuilt with American EMD engines, re-emerging as the Class 57. Those rebuilds still haul containers and rescue stranded trains today. So the Class 47 didn't just survive, it reincarnated. When a machine is this adaptable, you don't scrap it, you retask it. And that's exactly why the Duff, as enthusiasts affectionately call it, is still out there earning a living. Number 9. EMD Class 59. Number 9 is a genuine piece of railway history. The locomotive that broke the rules of who's even allowed to own a train. In the mid-1980s, a British quarrying company called Foster Yeoman had a problem. They moved enormous tonnages of crushed stone out of their Muirhead quarry in the Mendip Hills, and British Rail's aging, unreliable locomotives kept letting them down. So Foster Yeoman did something nobody had ever done. They went to America, to General Motors' Electromotive division, and ordered their own locomotives. The result was the Class 59, built on the proven mechanical foundation of EMD's legendary SD40-2. The first 4 entered service in 1986, and they were the first privately owned locomotives ever permitted to run on Britain's national mainline. That was a genuine revolution. Until then, only British Rail owned the trains. The Class 59 delivered exactly what Foster Yeoman wanted: route-pulling power and near-total reliability. These machines could haul enormous heavy aggregate trains up steep grades without breaking a sweat, and they did it day after day with an availability record that embarrassed the older British types. Their success directly convinced EMD and British operators that American diesel technology was the future, a lesson that would echo loudly a decade later. Nearly 40 years on, these locomotives are still doing the exact job they were bought for, dragging heavy stone trains out of the west of England, quarries, and across the country. They never chased glamour. They were bought to move rock, and they've moved rock for 4 decades straight. The Class 59 is proof that sometimes the most important locomotive isn't the fastest or the most powerful, it's the one that quietly changed who controls the railway, then went back to work. Number 8. EMD F40PH. Now we cross back to North America for a passenger legend that was born from a disaster. In the mid-1970s, Amtrak had gambled on a big 6-axle locomotive called the SDP-40F, and it was a nightmare, plagued by derailments. Desperate for a fix, Amtrak asked EMD for something completely different, a shorter, lighter 4-axle machine. EMD's answer, delivered in 1976, was the F40PH. Mechanically, it was essentially EMD's rock-solid GP42 freight locomotive wrapped in a sleek cowl body and geared for speed. It produced 3,000 horsepower, later 3,200 from a 16-cylinder 645 engine, and it carried a generator to supply electricity for heating and lighting the passenger cars behind it. That constant full-throttle roar earned it a nickname from crews, the Screaming Thunderbox. The F40PH didn't just fix Amtrak's problem, it became the face of American passenger railroading for over 2 decades. Around 449 were built through 1992, and it wasn't just Amtrak. Commuter agencies fell in love with it. Chicago's Metra, Boston's MBTA, New Jersey Transit, California's Caltrain, and Via Rail up in Canada all bought fleets. Amtrak itself retired its originals in the early 2000s in favor of newer power. The last one made its final revenue run in 2002. But here's the thing, that's not the end of the story. Hundreds of F40PHs are still hauling commuters to work every single morning across the United States, many rebuilt with modernized internals. And Via Rail in Canada, whose F40PH appeared on the back of the Canadian $10 bill, announced plans to keep its rebuilt fleet running until around 2035. That would push these machines toward a 50-year working life. Not bad for a locomotive born out of an emergency. Number 7. China Railways DF4. Number 7 takes us to China, and to a locomotive built in numbers so staggering it's almost hard to believe. The Dongfeng 4. East Wind 4 began as a trial machine at the Dalian Locomotive Works in 1969. Those early units were troublesome. China was building it during the chaos of the Cultural Revolution, and the first engines suffered constant reliability problems. But Chinese engineers refused to give up. Through the 1970s, they improved it batch by batch, and by the time the definitive DF4B version hit mass production, they had a winner. And produce it they did. More than 4,500 of the DF4B variant alone were built, and across all the variants, the DF4 family reached nearly 8,000 locomotives. That makes it the most produced diesel locomotive in Chinese history. There's a saying among Chinese rail fans, wherever there are Chinese railways, there are DF4s. Green ones, nicknamed watermelons, hauled freight. Orange ones, geared for higher speeds, pulled passenger expresses. With a roughly 3,300 to 3,600 horsepower engine, a 6-axle frame, and simple rugged construction, the DF4 became the machine that dieselized a nation, replacing steam across a rapidly expanding network. It could pull almost anything, almost anywhere. Today, China has moved aggressively toward high-speed electric trains, and the DF4's mainline days are numbered. In fact, in 2024, the National Railway Administration issued a directive to phase out the old Dongfeng diesels, the DF4 included, by the end of 2035. But by 2035 means they're still working right now. On non-electrified branch lines in remote regions and across countless industrial railways and ports, these 50-year-old veterans are still shoving wagons and hauling tonnage every day. When your production run tops 7,000, you don't disappear overnight. Number 6. EMD GP38-2. Number 6 is not glamorous. It's not fast. It's not powerful. And that is precisely why it might be the hardest working locomotive on this entire list. Meet the EMD GP38-2, the 4-axle machine that quietly runs a huge chunk of North American railroading. Introduced in 1972 as part of EMD's celebrated -2 line, it produces a modest 2,000 horsepower from a 16-cylinder 645 engine. And crucially, that engine is not turbocharged. In the world of locomotives, that's a feature, not a flaw. Fewer parts to break, easier maintenance, legendary reliability. Around 2,213 were built through 1986. The GP38-2 was never designed to set records. It was designed to show up and work, switching cars in yards, running local freights, trundling down lightly used branch lines where the giant 6-axle monsters would be overkill or too heavy for the rails. It does the unglamorous, essential, everyday labor that keeps freight moving, and railroads adore it. It became the 4-axle locomotive of choice for America's short lines and regional railroads, the small operators who can't afford to gamble on temperamental machinery. Even the massive Class 1 railroads still roster hundreds of them for yard and local duty, holding onto them precisely because nobody has built anything quite as versatile since. Many have been rebuilt with fresh cabs and updated controls to keep them legal and comfortable. There's a telling detail here. Back in 1982, an industry magazine named a GP38 its all-American diesel, honoring exactly this kind of no-nonsense dependability. More than 50 years after the first one appeared, the GP38-2 is still the machine railroaders reach for when they need a job done without fuss. It's the pickup truck of the railroad, and pickup trucks never go out of style. Number 5. British Rail Class 43. Halfway through our countdown, and now we crank up the speed. Way up. The British Rail Class 43 power car, the heart of the InterCity 125 high-speed train, holds a world record that has stood for decades. It is officially the fastest diesel locomotive on the planet. On the 1st of November 1987, an InterCity 125 set screamed down the East Coast main line and hit 148 miles per hour. No diesel locomotive has ever been officially clocked faster in service conditions. Its everyday cruising speed, a blistering 125 miles per hour, which is where the 125 in its name comes from. What makes this even more remarkable is that the HST was never meant to be the star. British Rail designed it in the early 1970s as a stopgap, an interim measure while they developed a fancy tilting train called the Advanced Passenger Train. The APT famously flopped. The temporary HST, built by British Rail Engineering between 1975 and 1982, went on to become the most beloved and successful train in British history. With its distinctive sloped yellow nose, it earned the affectionate nickname the Flying Banana. For over 40 years, these power cars slashed journey times across Britain, running from the Scottish Highlands down to the far southwest of England. And while newer trains have taken over the busiest routes, the Class 43 still refuses to fully retire. You'll still find them working in the West Country on the scenic lines through Devon and Cornwall, up in Scotland, and perhaps most fittingly, as the power behind Network Rail's high-speed track recording trains, racing across the network to measure the very rails they've pounded for half a century. A machine that was only ever supposed to be temporary is still doing 125 miles an hour. That's staying power. Number 4. The Indian ALCO WDM Family. Number 4 is a story of a machine that became so woven into a country's identity that most people there don't even realize it's American. In the early 1960s, India faced an enormous challenge, replacing its vast fleet of steam locomotives. The railways trialed designs from two American builders, ALCO and EMD. ALCO won the contract for one simple, decisive reason. They agreed to transfer the technology so India could build the locomotives itself at the Diesel Locomotive Works in Varanasi. That single decision shaped Indian railroading for the next half-century. The result was the WDM-2, based on ALCO's DL560C design, powered by a rugged 16-cylinder ALCO 251 engine. It became the definitive Indian locomotive, the very image that pops into an average Indian's head at the word train. For over 4 decades, this was the workhorse that hauled the nation. It could pull anything, run anywhere, and be maintained by mechanics in every corner of the country. When it needed more muscle, engineers squeezed more power out of that faithful ALCO block, creating the 3,100 to 3,300 horsepower WDM-3A in 1994. Counting new builds and rebuilds, well over 1,000 WDM-3As were produced. These ALCOs served both passenger and freight duty, thundering across non-electrified routes with their unmistakable exhaust bark and clouds of smoke that rail fans still travel miles to witness. India's aggressive electrification program is finally retiring them, and their mainline numbers are shrinking. But they haven't vanished. They still turn up on mainline and departmental duties across the subcontinent, and India has even gifted refurbished units to neighbors like Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, where they've begun second careers. An American design built in India, still working across South Asia 60 years later. That's a legacy few locomotives can match. Number 3. GE-9. Onto the podium. Number 3 is the locomotive that helped General Electric conquer American railroading. By the early 1990s, the Chicago and Northwestern Railroad was straining under the weight of enormous coal trains and needed more power. They pushed GE to build something stronger than the existing Dash 8. GE delivered, and in 1993 the Dash 9, properly the C44-9W, was born as the first production locomotive to crank out a full 4,400 horsepower. That muscle came from GE's proven 16-cylinder 7FDL engine riding on high-adhesion trucks that gripped the rails and gave crews a smoother ride. The Dash 9 was a monster hit. Built from 1993 all the way to 2004, more than 3,600 were manufactured at GE's plant in Erie, Pennsylvania. Through the 1990s and 2000s, it seemed like nearly every other locomotive on a major American railroad was a Dash 9. BNSF alone ordered around 1,697 of them. Norfolk Southern bought over 1,200 of a slightly detuned version. It hauled intermodal containers, coal drags, iron ore, and everything in between across the continent. Now here's what earns it a spot this high. These aren't preserved relics, they're still frontline freight power today. Walk to almost any busy main line in the United States and you'll watch Dash 9s roll by, hauling revenue tonnage 30 years after the design debuted. And railroads aren't just running them into the ground. Norfolk Southern launched a massive program to rebuild its Dash 9 fleet with modern alternating current traction motors, essentially giving these locomotives a second life as the upgraded AC44C6M. Canadian National has done similar rebuilds. When a locomotive is worth rebuilding rather than replacing, that's the ultimate compliment. The Dash 9 didn't just earn its keep, it earned a whole second career. Number 2. British Rail Class 66. Number 2 is a locomotive so successful, so utterly dominant, that British rail enthusiasts gave it a chilling nickname, the Red Death. Rewind to 1996. British Rail's freight business had just been privatized, and the new owner, English, Welsh and Scottish Railway, inherited a fleet of 1,600 aging, unreliable locomotives with an average age over 30 years. Hundreds had already been cannibalized for spare parts. The company needed a miracle. So, drawing on the success of that Foster Yeoman Class 59 we met earlier, they turned to EMD and placed an order for 250 brand new locomotives, the biggest British locomotive order since the days of steam. The Class 66 arrived in 1998, and it changed everything. The first unit entered service that June, hauling coal, powered by a 12-cylinder EMD 710 engine, producing 3,300 horsepower. Its real magic wasn't raw power, it was reliability. Consider this jaw-dropping comparison. The old Class 47 needed major attention roughly every 16 days between failures. The Class 66 was designed to run around 180 days between failures. That transformed the economics of British freight overnight, letting rail compete with trucks. The sheds, as crews nicknamed them for their distinctive roofline, multiplied like nothing before. In the frantic years around 1998 to 2000, operators sometimes withdrew 5 older locomotives for every single Class 66 delivered, hence the Red Death. Ultimately, well over 400 were built, and they spread far beyond Britain, working across Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium, Sweden, Denmark, Poland and France. Today, in 2025, roughly 400-plus Class 66s remain the absolute backbone of UK rail freight, the single largest standardized diesel fleet in British history. If you see a freight train in Britain, odds are overwhelming that a Class 66 is on the front. It's not vintage in the dusty sense, it's a machine from the late 1990s that simply never stopped dominating. Number 1. EMD SD40-2. And here it is, the champion. The single most successful heavy diesel locomotive of the late 20th century, and arguably the greatest workhorse the rails have ever known, the EMD SD40-2. Introduced in January 1972 as the flagship of EMD's Dash 2 line, the SD40-2 delivered 3,000 horsepower from a turbocharged 16-cylinder 645 engine, riding on 6 powered axles. On paper, more powerful locomotives already existed, but that missed the point entirely. The SD40-2's genius was the perfect marriage of adequate power, brilliant new solid-state modular electronics, and almost supernatural reliability. It hit the exact sweet spot the railroads craved. The market responded like nothing before or since. Between 1972 and 1986, EMD built more than 4,000 SD40-2s, making it one of the best-selling locomotives in the company's entire history, outsold only by the older GP9. For decades, it was simply the industry standard across North America. Special versions like the tunnel motor were built to fight overheating in the long tunnels and snow sheds of the Western Mountains. They hauled coal, grain, containers, and freight of every description across the continent. But raw sales numbers aren't why it's number one. It's number one because more than 50 years after the first one was built, the SD40-2 is still everywhere, still working, still turning a profit. Major railroads like CSX and Norfolk Southern continue to rebuild them into modernized versions rather than let them go. Countless short lines and regional railroads across the Americas and around the world depend on second-hand SD40-2s as the affordable, unkillable core of their fleets. And here's the beautiful full-circle moment. The SD40-2 was so good that its mechanical DNA lived on directly in Britain's Class 59. And then the mighty Class 66. Two other machines on this very list. One legendary design still earning its keep on multiple continents that also fathered its own successors. If any locomotive ever deserved the title of the ultimate blue-collar veteran, it's this one. The SD40-2 didn't just earn its keep, it defined what earning your keep means. Which of these veterans surprised you the most? And did we leave off your favorite hard-working locomotive? Let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this ride through steel and diesel, you know what to do.